It should be connected, but I just want to see if you can like actually hear a speaker talk.
Slight delay.
Slight delay, yeah, of course, but can you hear it? Is it clear? Because I'm trying to place this mic. Can you hear that?
Definitely audio. Say again.
There's definitely audio, but not a lot.
It might still be on delay.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's always going to be a delay. It's got to translate or transcribe it. You got it? It sounds all right. I just want to make sure somebody at home can actually hear it, so.
10, 30-second delay.
Yeah, that's normal. It should have a delay, so. Oh, yeah, sorry. Well, here's something with it. So, hopefully you have it. I mean, I didn't get that memo. Excellent.
Do we need to find a screen?
Eric's supposed to be here with one.
Oh, okay. The Eric Sand?
No, our Eric.
Oh, yeah.
He's supposed to come in with some other stuff too, so.
Cool.
Yeah. And we can move this around for size and all that stuff and we'll figure it out, but. I mean, we'll get there.
Just, we'll see if people want.
So you're all right with me running my computer for the presentation? Because I've got videos that I have to break. Yes. As long as you can do HDMI.
What's that?
You got HDMI, right?
HDMI.
Great, that's fine. I have no problems with that.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I got to get Francis going first for all the other stuff. Morning!
The precursors are actually it's a free route. Eventually splits apart.
I tried to look up the wood use.
You.
For you? You drink coffee, right?
I don't drink coffee. Thank you though. Love you. I got my tea.
I like kind of knew that. That's why.
Yeah, you're like kind of trepidatious about it. You're like, you. We're streaming. We're going. We're just waiting for a stream from Eric. Waiting for Eric to show up.
Oh, that's well. Yeah, there was that back there.
Perfect. It's perfect. Like you're.
Now it's better.
Need a new screen, right?
I know, right?
We like to get them on the archive. Yeah, I don't know. I mentioned your name. I'm on the podcast. And I brought your name up. And one of the guys on the group says, he's here. He's already up here. Yeah, I'm sure I'll talk to him about it.
Yeah, that was how the speaker.
Yeah.
Should we see how the speakers?
What's that?
See how the speaker sounds?
Yeah, well, that's gonna be. I'm gonna use that exclusively for Frances doing her Zoom.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's that way. So because she's gonna Zoom off the computer to do the presentation.
I think we should be able. I think we have.
I think so. I don't think we need to use that. I feel like if we're gonna be quiet enough to be able to do that.
I just hear that phone says he's going to change out
Frances said it sounds great from here for all this, so I got my little microphone.
I think it seems like it's in the perfect spot.
Yeah, these things are awesome.
Maybe if someone wanted it out here.
No, it would be fun, but this is awesome. It's like two mics that connects directly wirelessly to the computer or to the phone. Yeah, it's a little thing that I bought from JI. It's awesome.
Sweet.
Little charge case comes with it.
Microphone?
It's a mic setup, wireless mic setup.
Yeah. Everything's communicated.
Yeah.
But if I just try to just plug it in for a second, or am I going to screw everything up?
Well, you should be okay. You should be fine.
You just need the USB, right?
You just need this guy, the HDMI.
HDMI, USB.
What's up?
You have everything downloaded. We're all kind of set there, right?
I think we're set there. Yep.
Cool.
Everything's
Do you
good.
mind if I do a little look-see through the
What?
entire presentation slide, or at least the opening?
Well, Eric's gonna do his.
I just
off
want to do a quick.
off of his, so I'm not too worried about it.
Sounds good.
Frances is gonna be on Zoom,
Okay.
so I'm waiting to actually getting that set up real quick so she can. We can
You doing a Zoom?
with Frances.
Yeah.
And now we're
I just stood in front of
Waiting
the
for screen.
phone, and
Anyway.
she saw it.
Hi, Shay.
Are you up first, Eric? Or what's up? Or is Francis up first?
Frances up first, and Frances is gonna be going via Zoom. I'm gonna have her. I'm sorry. Can I have her start the meeting real quick? Yeah, so check the screen should be set. So.
Oh, you got it? Yeah, it's there, right?
Yeah, I mean, plug and play. Just should be fine. I'm not worried about it.
I'm not worried about it now.
Cool. And we'll give you kind of warnings on timing because we do need to keep an eye on time.
Okay.
Francis says it's going to be about 45 minutes. I heard yours is a little bit long. Like, if you can try to keep it moving along, we'll give you like a 15.
Okay, what do you think? You want to get wrapped up by
11-ish, like
Like,
because we got to get the second spot and all that stuff. So
Yep. We've got we'll be in good shape.
okay, cool. Here, yeah, we'll get you back here. Sorry, you're all set. Hang on.
Sorry. I'll stop doing that.
Hello. Hang on a second. I'm gonna see if I can get your. Eric, mind if I get a swing back real quick?
Yep.
Set up. Hey, go ahead and. Hey, Can you go ahead and say something? Okay. Keep talking.
Agreeing that you've read the term of expected behavior and your release.
That is super old though. It's like usually you're like grandparents or something like that. It's just ancient.
Where you staying?
Don't mind just fill that out. And then, don't save all that.
The lights is actually a lot nicer, but also not.
Yeah, they use that, we use the gypsy at work. That's how we feel.
Can you hear me?
They're legally low for the most part. Sheep, you know, rationale.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Is that a jail or do you actually write it?
Yeah, I'm not hearing you. It's weird.
You know me,
Microphone is external mic. Speaker is external speaker. Yeah, I can't hear you either.
Thank you so much for ordering. This burrito's awesome. You should eat that. Do you have a burrito?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Great. 1 second. I know you don't need to hear me, but we got to hear you first. So I'm trying to get the speaker working. So 1 second. 1 second.
I need to step away.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. Go ahead. Step away.
Or mountain stand. It's cute.
Really cute.
Super cute.
叫车，叫车。
等一下啊。Yep, I will. I know. 我会。我知道。Okay, 等一下。Yeah, 等一下。Okay, Mom. Okay, thanks, Mom. Hi, honey. Look at the tiny dog. Okay, you can hear me pretty well. Well, I can hear you now, so I think we're good. I think we're good. Well, we're everyone's watching you petting our dog, so. Well, kind of. Still waiting for the screen.
Oh, there he is.
Is he here?
Yeah.
Oh, let's probably give him a hand because the screen is pretty big. Here, let's go give him a hand. Aw. Let's just watch Francis pet her dog. Can you say something? Francis, say something. Say hi.
I can't hear you now, so.
That's why we can hear.
But you already turned down.
Oh, well, you're stuck with her then.
Like what?
Francis, say something. Say hi.
Hi.
Eric has a card?
And the screen.
I hope so.
That's the two.
Well, that's what we're,
Yep.
that's the other thing, right?
Exactly. That's all we need is a screen. And then we're pretty much set. So. All we need is a screen. Hopefully Eric's got the screen.
She won't leave.
I'm sorry. You're stuck with her now.
Let me put you down.
Sorry. You're stuck with her now.
Okay.
He says he doesn't have the projectors. He said that you had the setup.
Not the screen. He doesn't?
I don't think so.
Okay, we can do,
So let's do a quick bit.
we need to, okay.
What's wrong?
You don't have the screen with you?
No, I just thought the tape. I thought you just needed the shoots.
Okay.
Sorry, that was my misunderstanding.
Oh, yeah, no worries. We've got he did have a thing he was able to hang out.
Okay.
So,
Approved for 5 years. 2019, about Father's Day, 2019. I actually got the time. I just don't need the beer. But maybe after I kept all my stuff, and maybe after I retire at some point, and then get back in it. How about you?
Alright. This'll do. Yeah, we'll make it work. So?
Hey, that's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
cool.
Maybe we don't.
I should have probably
Yeah,
done
you
my
do.
Christmas ale.
Probably still.
Do you have remarkable
That should be ready for Christmas.
And then we can back this up.
This too. Move all the things around.
Do you want to put it on the table behind it?
Let me. What's weird is that we can't change
That's actually
width?
not
the size of it. This guy's
bad.
think they can,
change.
yeah.
Yeah, we can move it down.
move it down a little bit.
I think that looks totally fine. Great. Thank you.
If we can just figure out the size of it.
Thank you so much.
This is like an adjustable. Like.
This is the new one, right?
Yeah, it's a new one. It's a good one. Yes, 13. We got a few minutes.
Yeah, we've got time. We're like, nobody's here yet.
Francis has the. Cool. I'm gonna tell her.
That actually worked out pretty okay.
Yeah, that's all right. I need to transfer some things over.
Yeah, I mean it was pretty rainy up until the other side of Eisenhower, and it was all right. But it was wild, man. Touch the snow and stuff. Like,
We got snow up here.
I know.
Not like last night, but the night before.
Yeah, that's not surprising with how chilly it got. So I was kind of bummed Katie didn't have the trip. Like it's been 20 years since I've been up here, but they haven't been up ever. And it's a really pretty drop. So like luckily on Sunday we'll be able to see it all the way up. We were trying to get out earlier. We actually ended up getting we leased an EV and yeah, it's sweet, but we thought that it was we like had everything set up and we thought it was gonna like stop in at 1, drive out at 2, be down here by 5:30, 6. We didn't get out of the dealership until like this is sweet. How was the happy hour? It was good. Yeah, good attendance.
Yeah, and yeah, when I first
Yeah.
that's where it used to be in the radio.
Oh, I didn't. I was here.
That's amazing.
Oh, the distillery. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, and I know I was talking to the distiller out there like a few years ago. Yeah, Mythology down in. What did you? You're messy. Can I get you a? Oh, I see you're messy on your face. You want to take that off? All right.
Are you good, Dave?
Oh yeah, I'm good. Cool. I'm good.
Yeah, you guys have helped us help run there. Can't imagine that being a real big thing, but it's a small area. Kombucha and cider. That's it. They kind of moved their production over our event house.
Like, we can try to see what else is hooked up. I got the.
We could also try 2 benches on top of each other.
What's up?
We could also try 2 benches on top of each other. But
Yeah, I mean, we got plenty of room. That's got plenty of room to hold, so we can get it back here somehow.
there's another podcast. We can jump over there.
Huh?
Yeah.
That's much better.
Yeah.
That's so much better.
Hey,
Let's do that.
get this teamwork.
Fucking teamwork. And then we need to figure out. Oh yeah, that's
Can
obviously. That's
I look at the order of the intro slides so that I can see if Eric wants to jump up for scholarships and stuff?
Yes, it should be on.
It's like going, but
Yeah, here, I can skip that. Here, we can just do that for now. There's just no one else across there. So, this, I need to send over the intro slide from Francis.
BSI gets to talk during the sponsors.
Correct. And Eric, or
They get
or
5 minutes or what?
Nick does too, I think. Here, I'm going to send this over to. Oops, I'm sorry. Here's the computer. There we go. Set. Great. So this is the meeting. Here's the meeting slides if you want to.
Perfect. Perfect.
Announcements.
What do we want in the end?
Scholarships available next meeting. Okay, feel free to scroll through it. Like I got the rotating one just to do the regular stuff with, but
Okay, Nick's not saying anything during the thank you to our sponsors, but yes, I will.
okay.
What do we do? You want to put any announcements?
I do not. I think that generally that's the announcement. I think. So we're going to Strawberry Hot Springs. We're going to Strawberry at 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock. A lot of us are going. Okay. Okay, cool. Okay. Are you going to what you need to figure out?
Yep.
Okay.
Cool.
So yeah, I don't. So Nick's not saying anything in that.
Correct.
So now, I think it's just saying announcements. Just, I don't
Yeah,
know.
I'm gonna let them know that they're on slide 4.
Okay. Cool.
Railroad
Roughly around 30 is where I kind of penciled in. That would be about how much. I don't think that it's not necessary, so we can time it. Yeah.
Or even just do like I don't know. What are we seeing?
So we're gonna I got some capsules. Lindsay's gonna help. So she's gonna put the capsules in. We got control beer and test it.
And y'all make
Yeah.
We're gonna get going in a few minutes, everybody. So grab 4 foods, some coffee, and we'll get going in a few. All right, we're gonna go for it. Woo! Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to our destination meeting. This is the 3rd year we've done this. It's really awesome to have you guys all here. Thanks to the board, thanks to you. We're really happy to be here in Steamboat. Thank you so much to Mountain Tap and Storm Peak. Really appreciate you guys letting us use this space. This is awesome. And big thank you to our sponsors. We've got some really good ones this time. We've got Berkeley Yeast, we've got Haas, and we've got BSI. BSI is going to give us a few minutes and
thank you so much for the MBA for the opportunity to sponsor the event, and thank you Mountain Tap and Stone Peaks for hosting this event in a beautiful place. We enjoyed last night, you know. My name is Nava. I work as a QC manager at BSI since 2012. Few people I know here from the very beginning, like Dana Johnson. I know him for 2012. It's been a while. I haven't been to an MBA meeting, but I started just coming back, you know, just to get to know you guys. It was a good time last night. So hope to learn from you a lot. So today, as a sponsor, we got some few minutes to talk about our company and some products. So it's going to be a small promotion. So help me. How do I change this one? So we got some technical problems. No worries.
We'll send it over.
sorry, I am not the tech person, but we got it.
No worries, no worries. It's all right. All right, sorry for the inconvenience. It's gonna be it's gonna be a short few slides. So how do I proceed?
That's the microphone.
Oh, this is the microphone.
Keep that here.
I thought this is the remote. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So BSI we established 1996. We are East supplier lab services. We are now 100% employed. Our owner David and Brian, they were pretty kind enough to make the company to 100% employee owned last year. So it was good for all the employees, and we are Colorado proud now. We got a certification from Colorado Agriculture Department of Colorado. So we have 300 plus species strengths. We also sell bacterial cultures. We do banking. We have a consultation with any fermentation issues. You can call us anytime. We do qPCR testing and East Care products. So this month we are doing a special promotion, 25% off on our microbial testing, contamination testing, qPCR, and also on our products and some other lab services. Contamination testing, what do we do? I just want to give tiny synopsis here. So we tested all kinds of brewing bacteria, lactopedia, and all these wild yeast thing, and we also identified to the genus level of bacteria, and the results of these media testing will be like 5 to 7 days. So our regular cost is $45, but now because of promotion, we are doing $33.75, which is 25% off. PCR testing, we do qPCR testing. If you need to know your contamination issues 1 or 2 days, we do that. Few organisms we tested are Brettanomyces, Lactopedium, Megaspora, all these horsey and Diastaticus, which is a pretty big problem in the industry. We kind of take care of that. Our price is $99, but it's on a promotion right now. So we also sell a few products like media plates, RMD MBAA plates. It's come in 30 packs. We sell oat agar plates, yeast nutrients, oat concentrates, and clean and feed kit. If you have a harvested yeast, it is good to clean up your yeast using clean and feed kit. It comes with wort and some Daxichlor that Dan also has that product. Yeah, pretty much that's it. And we also run Express Yeast program in our lab. We sell yeast for the next day shipment. We have German lager, London Ale, Agostino, Chico, and we also have Mexican lager. Currently, we do express yeast for the next day, and we also have free delivery. Some of you, if you have not known, you can use our free delivery. We'll do in Denver metro area, Golden, Boulder, Longmont, and some Fort Collins. If you guys are interested, feel free to reach out to us. I'll be here today and tomorrow. Happy to chat with you if there is any issues with contamination or any services. Yeah, I'll be here for your answer. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Yeah, we really couldn't do this without sponsors, so thank you so much. Sponsors help us buy you beers, so overall 10 out of 10. We've got some scholarships available. Here's Eric May.
How's it going? I'm Eric May. I'm the scholarship chair. Talk about scholarships pretty much every meeting, but just want to touch on them again. We actually awarded 2 MBAA scholarships this year. One of them was the Brewing and Malting course, and one of them was the Packaging Sciences course. Eventually you will hear from those 2 individuals that attended that training or that course. They're going to give a little presentation hopefully soon. It's really, really interesting. I'm going to talk with the board, come up with some good guidelines of when submissions need to be done for next year. We didn't really ever have submission deadlines previously because we weren't getting a ton of applications, but last year we had a good number of applications, so we're gonna go forward with putting a deadline out there. Another new thing that we're doing this year is sponsoring student memberships for the RMD chapter. It's about an $80 value, so if you or someone you know is a student in a fermentation science brewing adjacent program and wants to attend these meetings, but maybe the barrier to entry is that cost, reach out to us, reach out to me, let me know. We have 10 available right now. We actually still have 10 available, so please reach out. It's a free way to get students in. We want that next generation of brewers coming in and not having any barriers to entry and being a part of this program. I think that pretty much covers it.
Yeah. We actually gave out a scholarship to somebody who is here right now, Chris. So we do give them out, and we really want you to take our money because that's why we're here.
Great.
Awesome, thank you.
Of course.
So we have our winter meeting. Usually our winter meeting is kind of a member appreciation. That one's going to be at Odell on December 9th. It's going to be awesome. We'll have some more details for you guys in the future, but that date is pretty locked in.
Is that the Sloan's Lake location? Or Odell?
Oh, no, sorry. That's actually going to be the one up in Foca.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we're going to move it up to Fort Collins this time. Awesome. So MBAA and our chapter, we have an expected behavior policy. I'm not going to read through all of this, but we're dedicated to providing a harassment-free conference experience for everyone, regardless of gender, sexual orientation, disability, physical appearance, body size, race, or religion. We will not tolerate harassment of any sort, so please just be nice to people, guys. We don't want to have to get into anything there, and we just want to be here to have fun. So, I would also like to acknowledge the land that we're on. We here are on Ute and Arapaho land, and we're really thankful to be here in Steamboat. All right, Frances is going to be our first speaker. Frances wasn't feeling great earlier this week, so she's not here, but we're going to try out a live streaming and see kind of how the entire experience goes. Frances has been on the board with me for 3 years. They're the vice president of Master Brewers, and I'm really, really thankful for them. Wish they could be here, but they're still here in spirit. So, Danny?
Okay, cool. We are going for it. All right, we're going to give this a shot. Frances is calling in from a Zoom call, as you can already see. So hopefully we can get the audio, everything else running. So I'll see if she can get started.
Hey there, I don't know if everyone can hear me.
Hi, Frances. Hey, Frances. Sounds pretty good. Maybe not anymore.
She'll be okay.
Hey there, everyone can hear me.
There's going to be a delay, I think, so let's see if this works.
So sorry that I can't be there with all of you. It turns out that I tested positive for strep on Thursday morning, and frankly, I wasn't going to be good enough with antibiotics until basically late last night. And it's just, I didn't want to put anybody else at risk, especially since I'm still symptomatic. So I'm so sorry that I can't be there and supporting you guys and enjoying lovely Steamboat Springs. It's been a goal of mine to get there since I moved to Colorado, and I guess I'm just going to have to keep waiting, and I'll have to bother our lovely board member that helped manage and put together this meeting. Rob, I'm going to have to come up and bug you separately. So thank you so much for coming and showing up, and I'm excited to present to you H2O, yeah, the chemistry of water. And so let's get started. So first, a little bit about me. So I'm the owner of Firmly, a third-party lab in Denver, Colorado. I'm a TTB certified brewing chemist. I am on ASBC webinar committee. I'm on the MBAA District Rocky Mountain Vice President, as Shay so kindly announced to you guys. And then I'm also on the MBAA DEI and Food Safety Committee. In the MBAA Brewing and Malting Science course, I am the subject matter expert on quality and also on brewing trends. I'm also on the Association of Food and Drug Officials Laboratory Science and Technology Committee. I'm also a freelance writer, and I am a multiple marathoner because I believe we should properly prepare for the zombie apocalypse. So, and the little picture there, yeah, I look a little bit younger there. That's because I was in 7th grade, and that's when I was using a hydrometer to test the salinity of a local pond to evaluate how surface runoff had impacted the ecosystem, making it impossible for oysters to no longer grow in oyster pond. So water chemistry is something very, very important to me, and I care a lot about. So let's get into what you're going to learn today. So we're going to go through, assess and evaluate water sources and forms of filtration, identify the roles of minerals, apply water treatment techniques, calculating and making water adjustments, water profiles from great brewing regions, analyze and adapt some water profiles, and we're going to talk a little bit about some wonderful beers that you guys are going to be having. So let's dive into the basics of water chemistry. So we're all very familiar with it. Water is a transparent, odorless, and nearly colorless liquid that is, chemically speaking, two hydrogen atoms bonded to an oxygen atom, and that's called H2O. It acts as a solvent in which all brewing processes occur, but can vary significantly based on several factors, since it often contains dissolved minerals and impurities. Now, pH is the measure of the acidity or basicity on a scale of 0, very acidic, to 14, very basic, with 7 being neutral. In brewing, the pH of the water affects the mash process and beer's flavor. The ideal pH for brewing water is slightly acidic, usually between 5.2 and 5.6. This particular range supports efficient starch conversion in the mash and yeast health during fermentation. Alkalinity refers to water's ability to neutralize acids, acting as a buffer to resist changes in pH. It is primarily determined by the bicarbonate's presence in the water. High alkalinity can raise the pH of the mash, which can be problematic when brewing certain beer styles. Hardness is primarily a measure of the concentration of calcium and magnesium ions. There are two types of hardness, temporary and permanent. Temporary is caused by the presence of bicarbonates and can be removed by boiling, whereas permanent is caused by sulfates and chlorides, which remain even after boiling. Now, dissolved gases can be present like oxygen and carbon dioxide. Oxygen has its moments in brewing, but can otherwise cause oxidation in scale flavors. I think we have a presentation about that later. And carbon dioxide can affect the water's pH and must be controlled to prevent pH imbalances while brewing. We also might have organic materials or contaminants, and those are things like algae, bacteria, traces of organic matter that can negatively impact the flavor and stability of the beer. And then we have minerals, which affect mash pH, yeast health, and the flavor profile of the beer. So, what are these minerals? And why do we care about them? So, we have calcium, and calcium is one of the most important minerals, as it helps lower the mash pH, which is essential for proper enzyme activity during mash. It also aids in yeast flocculation, which helps with beer clarity, and enhances the stability and shelf life of the beer. We also have a minimal direct impact on flavor, but it can significantly influence your overall beer quality. Then we have magnesium. Magnesium is a secondary nutrient for yeast, supporting fermentation. It also slightly lowers the mash pH, though less effectively than calcium. In higher concentrations, magnesium can impart a slight bitterness. In small amounts, it has little to no noticeable impact on flavor, but high levels can contribute to astringency. With sodium, it can enhance the body and sweetness when present in moderate amounts, complementing malt-forward styles. However, too much sodium can result in a salty or metallic taste. And this can add a smooth, rounded flavor to the beer, especially in stouts and porters, when balanced well. We have sulfates, which help accentuate hop bitterness and dryness, making them particularly beneficial for hoppy styles like IPAs. They promote a crisp, dry finish, enhancing perceived bitterness. And it contributes a sharp, dry bitterness, and that can be desirable in hop-forward beers. Then we have chlorides, which emphasize the malt character and fullness, adding to the perceived sweetness and body of the beer. They are ideal for malt-heavy styles such as porters, stouts, and some lagers, and it can provide a smooth, rounded mouthfeel and enhance that malty sweetness. We also have bicarbonates, and they contribute to alkalinity, which can raise the mash pH. They are useful in brewing darker beers that naturally have acidic malts and need higher pH buffering. In lighter beers, high bicarbonate levels can result in undesirable flavors and reduce mash efficiency. Keep in mind that high levels can also impart a chalky or soapy taste, particularly in those lighter beers. Zinc, although present in trace amounts, zinc is crucial for yeast health and fermentation efficiency. It helps enzymes function properly and contributes to overall yeast vitality. So you can often add zinc during fermentation. I highly suggest when you're doing a hazy IPA. So then we have our minimal impact on flavor when in trace amounts. However, it does support fermentation and consistency. Then we have chlorine and chloramine, which are often present due to water treatment processes. Chlorine and chloramine can lead to off flavors if not removed. They can react with phenols from hops or malt to create chlorophenols, which have a medicinal or plastic-like taste. And so you really kind of want to remove those before brewing, you know? So then we have some other things that can kind of come in with your water that you really need to consider as well. We have iron, which even in small quantities, can impart metallic or raspy flavors to the beer. It can also promote haze formation and oxidation, affecting both the appearance and stability of the beer. Iron should be kept below 0.3 parts per million to avoid these negative effects. Brewers often filter water to remove that detectable iron content. Then we have manganese, which is like iron, and can impart metallic off flavors and contribute to haze formation. It can also cause staining of brewing equipment and impact your yeast health at higher concentrations. So you really want to keep this below 0.05 parts per million to avoid taste and stability issues. Then we have copper, which is also trace amounts are great for yeast health, but higher concentrations of copper can be toxic to yeast and lead to unpleasant metallic flavors. Copper also promotes oxidation, which can result in stale flavors. So you should really try and keep this below 0.1 parts per million. Then we have aluminum, and this can contribute to metallic or astringent off flavors in beer. In large amounts, it may also have negative health impacts. So most brewing grade equipment avoids aluminum, but water from certain sources may contain trace amounts. So you want to try and keep these levels minimum, and hopefully you've invested in some really good quality brewing equipment that doesn't have any aluminum in it. Now we also know about lead. It's pretty toxic. We've had a lot of problems. We've chatted a bit about what happened in Flint, Michigan, because it was a serious health risk. Even trace amounts can be harmful, so lead contamination is a really critical concern. So you really need to make sure that your water is being tested for that. Nitrates and nitrites can cause health issues and contribute to off flavors. Nitrates in particular can form compounds that are hazardous when ingested. And so you really want to keep these ions to a minimum, ideally below 10 parts per million. Sources of contamination include agricultural runoff and septic systems. Then we have fluoride, and while fluoride is added to many municipal water supplies for dental health because, hey, not everybody knows how to brush their teeth correctly, it can contribute to off flavors if present in high concentrations. However, it's usually found in small amounts that are unlikely to impact brewing. And since they're generally low, they don't tend to be a huge issue in brewing, but you probably should, monitor it every now and then, especially if you're noticing some interesting things. And then we have microbes, bacteria, algae, fungi, protozoa. And those microbial contaminations can lead to spoilage and off flavors, including sour or unpleasant aromas. Certain bacteria, such as coliforms, pose health risks, while wild yeast can cause unintended fermentation flavors. And this is something to also consider, especially when you're looking at hot water, because if you're not doing great with cleaning, some of these microbes can get through. So you really want to address this with kind of a variety of different treatments to make sure that you're not having these problems. And municipal water supplies tend to be pretty good about controlling microbial content, but you might have to consider that with other water sources. Then we have organic contaminants, and those organic compounds are from agricultural runoff, pesticides, or decaying matter that can lead to off flavors and potential health concerns. They can also lead to unintended chemical reactions during brewing. So you really want to do some regular testing on that. But where do some of these things come from? Let's talk about some of the water sources and consider all of that. So we have our municipal tap water. And municipal water is probably the most accessible and commonly used source for professional brewers. It often contains a stable mineral content, which can vary widely depending on the city's water treatment processes and natural water source. It typically contains chlorine or chloramine for disinfection, so you really want to consider the fact that these can impart undesirable chemical or medicinal flavors if not removed, as we previously discussed. So then we have well water. And well water is drawn from underground sources and often contains high levels of minerals like calcium, magnesium, and bicarbonates. This mineral content can be advantageous for certain beer styles that benefit from higher hardness and alkalinity, such as stouts and porters. But you also have to consider that well water varies greatly based off of local geology. And that's why we're going to be talking later about some of the great brewing regions. But it may also contain contaminants like iron, manganese, or organic matter. So you really want to make sure that you're doing some really thorough testing and potential filtration for getting that consistency and safety for brewing. Then we have spring water, which is naturally filtered as it flows through underground rock layers, giving it a unique mineral profile. It is often considered a high-quality water source for brewing, as it usually contains a balanced mineral content that can suit a variety of beer styles. But while spring water can be consistent, that mineral content is also not standardized, meaning that you're going to have to test it regularly to ensure it meets the needs of specific beer styles. And availability and cost can also be factors, as not all breweries have convenient access to spring water. Then we have lake or river surface water. Some breweries, especially in rural areas, may have access to surface water, which can be rich in natural minerals. However, seasonal changes in rainfall can influence the mineral content, potentially offering unique local characteristics. But because it's so highly variable and can contain contaminants from agricultural runoff, organic material, and microbial life, it can require expensive testing and treatment to ensure it is meeting brewing standards, making it less ideal for consistent brewing unless you have a reliable purification system set up. Then we also have rainwater. I don't see this very often, but I do know of a couple of brewers that do it. Rainwater is very soft. It contains little to no minerals, which can be advantageous for delicate beer styles that require low mineral content. But the collection depends on local environmental factors, and may pick up airborne pollutants. It requires thorough filtration and treatment to remove those contaminants, and it can make it really challenging for a larger scale brewing operation. Additionally, rainwater lacks a lot of those essential brewing minerals, so significant adjustments might be required. So let's talk about some of the factors that you need to consider when you're thinking about your water source. Seasonal variability, the mineral content and overall quality of some water sources, particularly surface water like lakes and rivers, and even some municipal supplies like in my hometown, it comes from a lake, can fluctuate with the seasons. Rainfall, drought, snowmelt, and other, we're not talking about the upslope seltzer, which is absolutely wonderful, and other seasonal factors can introduce varying levels of minerals, organic matter, and contaminants. So you really want to monitor water quality throughout the year and adjust their treatment and brewing processes as needed to accommodate these changes. Source stability and consistency. The consistency of the water source over time is crucial for maintaining the same beer quality across batches. Municipal water sources may change the treatment process or water supply without notice, affecting pH, mineral levels, and other parameters. So you really want to do regular testing of all sources, particularly municipal and surface water. And you really want to get that consistency in brewing so that you can avoid those unexpected flavor changes and batch inconsistencies. What about availability and supply security? For breweries that rely on sources like well water or rainwater, availability can be affected by environmental factors or regulatory restrictions. So droughts can lower groundwater levels, and water usage caps may apply during dry seasons or in certain regions. So it's really important to consider how to have a reliable water source or a backup plan if supply does become limited. Diversifying water sources or having the ability to switch to another source can help ensure production continuity. Water source usage is also often subject to local regulations, which may include restrictions on water extraction, disposal, and treatment. For instance, wells may require permits, and wastewater disposal may be regulated based on mineral or pH levels. Understanding local regulations around water usage and wastewater treatment is essential for compliance. This may also affect decisions about water treatment systems and the choice of water sources. What about sustainability and also the environmental impact? Because some water sources, like large-scale surface or well water extraction, can have environmental consequences. Breweries increasingly need to consider sustainable practices, including reducing water waste, recycling, and minimizing their impact on the local ecosystems. So choosing a water source that aligns with sustainable practices, such as utilizing rainwater or investing in water recycling technologies, can benefit the environment and also support your brewery branding. Because we're all really here for marketing, not science, right? So water source treatment compatibility also should be considered. Different water sources may require distinct treatment methods. For example, well water with high iron content might need specialized filtration, while municipal water might only require chlorine removal. So breweries need to evaluate the compatibility of their chosen water source with their existing water treatment capabilities or budget for new treatment solutions as needed. Then we have cost implications. Sourcing and treating water can incur significant costs, especially if extensive filtration or mineral adjustments are needed. RO systems, for example, require substantial investment and ongoing maintenance. So you really need to assess the long-term costs associated with each water source, including any necessary treatment, filtration, or supplementation to achieve those desired water profiles. And then what about impact on your equipment and maintenance? High levels of certain minerals, such as calcium and bicarbonates, can lead to scaling and deposits in brewing equipment, potentially increasing maintenance requirements and affecting equipment lifespan. And this is also why sanitation is very important. And what do you have for your MSS? Master Sanitation Schedule, which also just recently got published by the Food Safety Committee, so you should definitely check it out. Brewers should consider water conditioning to mitigate mineral buildup and may need to adjust cleaning and maintenance schedules based on the characteristic of their water source. So we also are going to dive into some forms of filtration, but first I'm going to have a sip of water because, whew. Okay, so water filtration works by removing impurities, contaminants, and unwanted substances from water to improve its quality and make it suitable for brewing. Different filtration methods target various contaminants and can be tailored to achieve specific water characteristics. Here are some common types of water filtration and how they work. And keep in mind, each filtration method targets different impurities, and you may need to consider using a combination of these techniques to achieve the desired water quality. So we want to remove unwanted substances, control mineral content, and ensure that consistency, and frankly, the resulting beer. So some types of filtration. Carbon filtration, activated carbon. Filters use porous carbon particles to adsorb, not absorb, and trap organic compounds, chlorine, chloramine, and some volatile organic compounds from the water. The large surface area of activated carbon effectively captures these contaminants as water passes through the filter. So what is the benefit here? It removes chlorine and chloramine, which can cause off flavors in beer, and improves the overall taste and odor of the water. Reverse osmosis, how it works. So, RO filtration uses a semi-permeable membrane to remove a wide range of dissolved solids and impurities, including minerals, salts, bacteria, and heavy metals. Water is forced through the membrane at high pressure, leaving contaminants behind and resulting in nearly pure water. So one of the benefits is that it produces water with very low mineral content and allows brewers to customize a water profile from scratch by adding specific minerals to suit different beer styles. And this also gives you really great consistency. Then we have sediment filtration. And sediment filters remove larger particles like sand, silt, dirt, and rust from water. These filters typically consist of a fine mesh or fibrous material that traps these particulates as water flows through. This prevents clogging and wear on other filtration systems and brewing equipment, ensuring that the water is free from visible impurities. And you may have to consider this, when you're using a well water source or something similar. Then we have ultraviolet filtration. And so it uses ultraviolet light to kill or inactivate microorganisms, including bacteria, viruses, and algae, by damaging their DNA. Yes, UV is very bad for microbes, just as it's not good for our skin. So, as water passes through a UV chamber, it's exposed to those UV rays, which neutralize, which is a nice way of saying, kill those pathogens. So it provides microbial control without chemicals, which ensures the water is free from biological contaminants that could affect fermentation or spoil the beer. We have ion exchange, and this filter uses resins to remove specific ions from the water, such as calcium and magnesium, which contribute to water hardness. In a typical ion exchange process, hard minerals are replaced with sodium or potassium ions. Now, this reduces the hardness in water, which can prevent scaling in brewing equipment. In some cases, ion exchange can also be used to soften water, which may be necessary for some of your beer styles. You can also do distillation. Now, distillation involves boiling water to create steam and then condensing that steam back into liquid form, leaving most impurities, minerals, and contaminants behind. Now, this process removes nearly all dissolved solids. This produces very pure water with no mineral content, similar to RO water. However, distillation is not something I would recommend for larger scale. I usually see this for people that they're just getting tired of having to constantly purchase distilled water, and they're going through so much of it that they really need it for lab purposes or similar kind of calibration. So then we have mechanical filtration, micron filtration, and that is mechanical filters using a physical barrier, such as mesh or a fine membrane, to block particles above a certain size from passing through. These filters can be rated in microns, indicating the size of particles they can remove. And this is useful for removing suspended solids and fine particles, which can help clarify water and protect other filtration systems from clogging. Now, let's talk about what we had before and what we're going to have after filtration. Before, you might have contained impurities and organic matter. You might have chlorine, chloramine, or heavy metals like iron and manganese. You have the potential for high mineral content and possible presence of microbes or bacteria, but the goal after filtration is sediment and particles are removed. Chlorine and chloramine are reduced or eliminated. Heavy metals and excess minerals are adjusted. Microbial content is minimized, and water quality is optimized for consistent taste and reliable brewing results. So let's talk about water treatment. So we have a couple of treatments that you can do to the water before you get started brewing. So carbon filtration, we talked about how it was chlorine, chloramine, all flavors, phenols, chlorophenols, which makes it as an older chemical taste. So the water passes through that activated carbon filter, absorbing chlorine, chloramine, and it makes it taste cleaner and less chemically altered. We have RO, removes nearly all dissolved solids and impurities, creating that neutral phase. And then we have sediment filtration, removes larger particles like sand, rust, and silts to prevent clogging of equipment. And then we move into water softening with ion exchange. We reduce the hardness by removing calcium and magnesium ions, replacing with sodium or potassium ions. I'm reviewing this because, frankly, everyone needs to know these. And then we move into some of the more fun things, like boiling and decanting. Now, boiling precipitates bicarbonate and that temporary hardness, which can raise the mash pH and lead to undesirable flavors in later years. So that allows the bicarbonates to precipitate out of solids, which are then removed by decanting the water after it cools. This technique works best for water with temporary hardness. However, then we can go into acid adjustments, and that lowers alkalinity by neutralizing bicarbonates, which helps achieve the target pH range for the mash. Now, small amounts of acids like phosphoric, lactic, or hydrochloric acid are added to the water to adjust the pH before mashing. So I know all of you test your pH beforehand. I don't need to explain to you how to do it, but just a reminder, hey, check your pH. And then, of course, we have all the biotreatment, which we talked about, host bacteria, viruses, other microorganisms, because, you don't always want to have to use chemicals to get the job done. And then what can we do when we're brewing? So this is when we're doing the mineral additions, and that adjusts the water chemistry to match desired profiles for specific beer styles, influencing flavor and mouthfeel. So you can add things like gypsum, calcium chloride, Epsom salts, baking soda, directly to the brewing water. So they impact the mash pH, hardness, and flavor, allowing you to create that profile for various styles like IPAs to stouts. Then we have pH adjustments, and we want to ensure that mash pH falls within the optimal range, which usually is between 5.2 and 5.6, for enzymatic activity, maximizing starch conversion and promoting that yeast health. So you can add phosphoric, lactic, or bases like calcium carbonate to the mash water, or work to fine-tune pH levels. This can be monitored with pH meters or pH papers. Then we have decoction mashing, traditionally used to enhance flavor and control mash pH, naturally, particularly in continental European styles. A portion of the mash is boiled and then returned to the main mash, which raises the temperature and can help lower the mash pH due to increased acidity from the malt. And then we have acidulated malt, and frankly, we had a wonderful joke when I took the brewing and malting science course because somebody said, I am pure chaos, I like to do acidulated malt, and we were like, and your malt king isn't my malt king, and that's okay. So acidulated malt lowers mash pH in a more natural way by adding malt that has been treated with lactic acid. And you can add specific percentage of acidulated malt to the grain bill during the mash, and the malt has an acid profile that helps reduce that pH without the need for direct acid additions. Now let's get into calculating and making adjustments. Also, beer time, so I'm going to take a brief pause, have a little sip of water as we are dispensing some beers. So, this next section is sponsored by Berkeley Yeast. So if you could just scan the QR code to provide feedback on the beer you are trying. Don't worry, I will have it show up again later in the presentation. They are trying to get feedback on cold host strains that are 2 years, both brewed identically from Split Wort Street. Same kettle hops and no dry hopping. One is a control, normalized yeast, and the prototype is one that has been engineered to make different flavors. Unlike previous meetings, this one is not focused on dialogue. We would love to hear your thoughts, so be sure to scan that QR code to evaluate the prototype and see the control as just that, a control. And consider that they also may share some of the same faults as well, so try to be distinct in your assessment, and thanks for participating in this little experiment. And thank you so much to Berkeley Yeast for sponsoring. So you're going to be getting the first beer should be the control, and the second beer should be the lovely prototype. And we're going to use how did the water profile of this beer make this come to exist? So, we're going to give a quick rundown of how do we make some of these adjustments. So you want to analyze the source water profile. A need a water report. Brewers typically start by getting a water report from their local water supplier or testing the waters themselves. And the report should be pretty detailed in terms of key minerals like calcium, magnesium, sodium, sulfate, chloride, bicarbonate, and pH. And with a water profile, you can assess the mineral levels and pH to understand the baseline characteristics and how they might impact brewing. It's important. The QR code will be up against, and don't worry. Drink your beers, try it. So determine the target water profile. Select a profile based on beer style. Different beer styles benefit from specific mineral balances. For example, an IPA might have higher sulfate to accentuate hop bitterness, while a stout might favor higher bicarbonate for better balance with darker malts. And you will need to make sure that you consult those style guidelines. You can refer to established water profiles for classic brewing regions. So use guidelines that provide typical ranges for minerals content based on the desired styles. And then we can calculate the required mineral additions using brewing software or spreadsheets, which can help you with built-in calculators. These tools allow brewers to input their source water profile and desired target profile. And then we can input desired mineral levels. By inputting the target mineral concentrations, the software calculates how much of each mineral needs to be added. And then common brewing salts are like gypsum, calcium sulfate, which adds calcium sulfate. Then we have calcium chloride, then we have Epsom salt, which is magnesium sulfate, and then we have baking soda, sodium bicarbonate, calcium carbonate, chalk. So you can use these for all of those super fun things. Then we have adjusting alkalinity and pH, estimate acid or base requirements. So depending on the water profile and the target mash pH, typically between 5.2 to 5.6, the brewer might need to add acids like phosphoric or lactic acid to lower alkalinity, or bases like calcium carbonate to raise pH. Calculate acid additions. Software tools can also calculate the amount of acid you might need to achieve that desired pH adjustment based on bicarbonate levels. And you can use pH papers or a pH meter, and those are useful for monitoring and confirming mash pH. Make adjustments during brewing. Add salts and acids to the brewing water. After calculating the exact amounts, salts and acids are added to the brewing water. Some brewers add minerals to the entire brewing volume, while others only adjust the mashed water, depending on the style and brewing process. Now, we monitor pH during mashing. Once the mash begins, brewers may need to make further adjustments to achieve the correct pH range, either by adding more acid or using acidulated malt. Test and fine-tune. So you want to conduct test batches. Many brewers conduct small-scale test batches to experiment with different water adjustments, especially if they are brewing a new style or using a different water source. Taste and evaluate. After brewing, sensory evaluation helps determine if the adjustments provided the desired impact on flavor and mouthfeel. Brewers can make note of any changes needed for future batches. So let's talk additions for prototype. Yes, look, that QR code, it came back. So make sure that you scan it this time. So considering what we know are options for adjusting water profile, we have gypsum, calcium sulfate, adding calcium and sulfate, Epsom salt, magnesium sulfate, adds magnesium and sulfate, calcium chloride, adds calcium and chloride, phosphoric acid, lowers mash pH. So let's play around a bit with what the brewer adds to make this beer. What we can guess from these additions is that the starting water is likely to be low to moderate calcium levels. Adding calcium aids in mash pH, yeast health, and beer clarity. Low sulfate and chloride levels. The addition of gypsum raises the sulfate to enhance the hop bitterness of IPAs. The calcium chloride helps balance the chloride level that supports mouthfeel and body. Then we have elevated alkalinity. Adding phosphoric acid is in both the mash and boil kettle indicates that the starting water may have moderate to high bicarbonate levels, which raises the pH. Then we have adequate magnesium. So no Epsom salt was added, which implies that the starting amount of magnesium is sufficient and should not be increased since it can contribute to bitterness. So to summarize, the starting water profile is lowering calcium, sulfate, and chloride, but has moderate to high alkalinity. The adjustments reflect a goal of a classic IPA profile with pronounced bitterness, crisp dryness, and balanced hop forward character, which I wish I was drinking with all of you, but unfortunately, I'm just going to have to settle for drinking water at home. So I'm going to actually have a quick sip. You can scan that QR code, and let's get through and let's make sure that, Berkeley gets to know a little bit about what we think about this beer. And if you don't scan that QR code, don't worry, it will be at the end of the presentation too. So got you on that, and no need to keep texting me about it. Thanks, guys. So then we move on to water profiles from great brewing regions. So, great brewing water profiles. Let's just do a quick summary. I'm not going to dive into what we have here in Colorado because we know we've got it. We know we've got great water. But let's talk about how some other regions' water chemistry contribute to unique characteristics that make certain beer styles particularly well suited to the local water. Here are some defining characteristics of water from those brewing regions and the styles they are famous for. So, Burton-on-Trent in England, high in calcium and sulfate with moderate bicarbonate, known for having exceptionally high sulfate levels, like up to 800 parts per million. Now, the impact on brewing is that this high sulfate content emphasizes hop bitterness, making the water perfect for pale ales and IPAs. The signature styles are pale ales, especially Burton Pale Ale, and English IPAs. The sulfate enhances crispness and dryness, accentuating that hop character. Then we have Dublin, Ireland, which is high in bicarbonates with moderate calcium and low sulfate. The water is quite alkaline and hard, which pairs well with darker malts. Now, the impact on brewing is that this high bicarbonate content helps to balance the acidity of roasted malts, making it ideal for dark beers. So that probably makes sense that they're known for Irish Stout and other dark ales and Guinness and all that good stuff. The bicarbonate softens the acidity, giving these beers a smoother mouthfeel. It's not just all nitre, baby. And so then we have Pilsen in the Czech Republic, and they have extremely soft water with very low levels of minerals, particularly calcium, magnesium, and bicarbonate. The softness allows for delicate, nuanced flavors with minimal mineral interference. This softness also enhances malt sweetness without overshadowing it. But then we have signature styles like Pilsner lagers. The soft water contributes to the beer's smooth, clean, and slightly sweet profile, allowing the sauce hops that are often used to impart subtle bitterness. Vienna, Austria, this is going to be relevant later, moderate levels of calcium and bicarbonate with relatively low sulfate and chloride. It's softer than Munich's water, but harder than Pilsen's. And the balanced mineral content supports both malt and hop flavors, making it versatile for a range of lager styles, which is probably why we know of Vienna lagers. And this balanced profile allows for a toasty, malty beer with subtle hop bitterness. Then we have San Francisco Bay Area. Yeah, let's just jump across the pond. The water is moderately soft with low levels of calcium, magnesium, and sulfate, making it relatively neutral and easy to adjust. So it's versatile for brewing a variety of styles, but brewers often adjust to enhance hop bitterness or malt sweetness as needed. And signature styles there is the California Common, otherwise known as a steam beer. The moderate mineral content allows for that balanced profile that can highlight both malt and hops. Then we can pop over to Milwaukee, and they have moderately hard water with balanced calcium, bicarbonate, and sulfate levels. Similar in profile to some European brewing waters, though often with lower sulfates. The balanced profile makes it versatile with slight adjustments necessary for specific styles. Now, that's why they're probably known for their American lagers and light pilsners. The water's balanced mineral content works well for easy drinking beers with mild hop and malt flavors. Now, I want to pop over to Stowe, Vermont, because, I mean, why not? They have soft water that is pretty low in iron, manganese, and non-beneficial metals. The water tends to be fairly clean and crisp. The sulfate and chloride levels are low, and they have moderate alkalinity. Now, the impact here is that the soft water with a slightly alkaline pH requires some monitoring and adjusting, as well as for the low sulfate and chloride levels, which should be considered since these can result in highlighting of malt flavors over the hop bitterness or dryness. Ironically, though, known for the unfiltered IPAs, the soft water complements this style well. And the low sulfate supports a hazy, juicy, less bitter profile, and chloride adjustments enhance that mouthfeel. We are also known for Austrian-style lagers, Vienna, and the low mineral content allows for well-balanced beers that have garnered more than a few awards recently, considering the Von Trapp family was from Austria. They settled in Stowe, Vermont after escaping the Nazis. It's no big surprise that we ended up with some pretty good beers, and all of them very reminiscent of Austria. So, if you want to throw this down to music, you don't have to go all the way over to Europe. You can just travel to Stowe, Vermont. So let's talk about analyzing and adapting your water profile. Now, adapting water chemistry, you want to tailor water profiles to beer styles. Adjust the mineral content, calcium, sulfate, chloride to match the style's needs, such as enhancing hop bitterness in IPAs or balancing malt sweetness in stouts. You want to use brewing salts like gypsum, calcium, chloride, and Epsom salts to fine-tune that water chemistry. Then we have pH adjustments, monitoring that match pH, and using acid additions or base adjustments to achieve those desired levels. Then we want to consider that seasonal water variability. So you want to regularly test your water quality as seasonal changes can affect mineral content and pH. So you want to talk to myself, Oregon Brew Lab, Ward Labs, make sure that you're getting it tested and apply that so that you make sure you know that how your water is changing, because you can only do so much in the brewery. And then adapt treatment methods based on the water source fluctuations throughout the year, adjusting alkalinity for rain seasons and things like that. Then you want to analyze that water quality. Use digital pH meters, water testing kits, and sending off to professional labs. And then key parameters to track: calcium, magnesium, sulfate, chloride, sodium, bicarbonates, pH, and hardness. And then you can use software and tools. Use brewing software like I prefer Beer 30 to calculate mineral additions and predict how adjustments affect the final beer. Then you want to compare your water profiles across the brewing regions for inspiration. So, great, consistent, high-quality beer requires regularly analyzing your water profiles and adapting them to meet the needs of specific styles, ensuring optimal flavor and stability. And I would be remiss if I did not mention sustainability. So, let's talk about it. Efficient water use and recycling. Implement water-saving practices such as reusing rinse water for non-potable processes. Consider water recycling systems to reduce the overall water consumption, especially in areas with limited water resources. We want to reduce chemical additives and minimize the use of chemicals by optimizing natural water profiles where possible. You want to choose eco-friendly filtration and treatment methods like carbon filtration over chemical treatments to reduce that environmental impact. Then we have responsible wastewater management. Treat and neutralize wastewater before disposal to reduce contamination and prevent harm to local ecosystems. Explore anaerobic digestion and other processes to convert wastewater byproducts into biogas or other reusable resources. Then we have local water source protection. Use local water resources to reduce transportation and energy costs. Engage with local communities and environmental groups to protect watershed areas and promote sustainable practices. Then monitoring and adapting to climate change impacts. Be aware of how climate change may affect water availability and quality over time. And adapt water treatment methods to address seasonal variability and fluctuating mineral content due to climate change. Now, 10 things you can apply now, and tomorrow, and tomorrow. Evaluate the impact of the chloride to sulfate ratios. Beyond individual mineral levels, consider the ratio of chloride to sulfate to fine-tune the balance between malt sweetness and hop bitterness. A higher chloride to sulfate ratio enhances maltiness, while the opposite emphasizes hops. Use acidulated malt instead of adding acid. For more subtle pH control, try using acidulated malt rather than liquid acids. This method can add slight acidity without affecting the water directly. Method for styles that benefit from a malt-derived tang, like certain lagers and wheat beers. Consider sodium levels for mouthfeel. Small additions of sodium via baking soda can improve mouthfeel and add a slight sweetness without saltiness. This can be especially helpful in fuller-bodied ales and stouts. Now beware of over-mineralization. Adding too many minerals can lead to harsh flavors. So start with minimal adjustments and taste test whenever possible. Simplicity often yields a cleaner, more balanced final product. Be cautious with iron, because even trace amounts of iron can impart metallic flavors and lead to oxidation, which I think we're talking about next. If using low water, consider those iron levels and treatment options if iron is present. Mind the temperature of that added water. When diluting with RO or distilled water, temperature differences can affect mash and sparging efficiencies. So ensure all water additions are at the correct temperature for your brewing step. Adjust sparge water separately. Consider treating sparge water separately from mash water, particularly for pH. Adjusting sparge water pH to 5.5 can prevent tannin extraction and harsh flavors in the finished beer. Factor in calcium for your yeast health. Beyond mash pH control, calcium is essential for yeast health and yeast cell wall integrity and flocculation. Aim for at least 50 parts per million of calcium for reliable fermentation and clearer beer. Monitor the effects of weather on the water supply. If using surface or well water, be mindful of how rain, drought, and other weather patterns are going to affect your mineral content. Some shifts may require rapid adjustments to maintain consistency. And then you can utilize brewing software for consistency. While often used for recipes, Grow software can also track and calculate those water adjustments. Consistent use of these tools can help standardize water profiles, particularly when adapting to unexpected changes in water quality. And keep in mind, you can gather all this data about your water, but it's only useful if you figure out how to use it. So make sure that you are finding a way to use it, and that it's not just going stored in a spreadsheet or going on a, frankly, a piece of paper that's going to get filed away and not be looked at again until there's a problem. So, resources for this. I mean, of course, I have John Palmer on here. I also have Principles of Urban Science. You all know the books. You should go read them. I have a couple of really fun papers on here too. Don't worry, you're going to be able to have access to these slides later. If you have any questions, I want to make sure that we end in time so that Eric can get up here and talk about his little thing. So feel free to email me, make sure to check us out at Firmly Know, or you can find me on Instagram at Sugar. And thank you so much. And of course, there's a QR code again, just so that you can scan that, make sure that you take a look. Please, thank you so much for Berkeley East for doing this with us and sponsoring that little section and the beers in your hands. So I'm just going to leave this slide up until you guys decide to take it down.
Awesome. Thank you, Francis. We miss you, but that went really well. We're going to get Eric's slides going. If anybody needs to grab some more coffee, run to the restroom. We've got a few minutes.
I just need to grab
Okay. All right.
USB.
Yep. Give it.
Does this need to stay?
No, I need. I'll grab that from you. Just.
Well, I'm going to send my laptop.
Yep. I'm gonna. Yeah, that's fine.
Because I think, cord-wise.
Well, that'll kill the QR code, but hopefully everyone's got it.
Sorry.
No, hopefully everyone's got it already. I think everyone's got it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Everyone's got it.
Okay.
Everyone's got it. Wave hi to everybody. All right. Well, thank you.
All right. Okay. Shall I get started?
This is the microphone, but you don't need to talk at it. Yep. It picks up really, really well, so
Okay.
I will just get out of here. Is that good enough for the cable? I don't know.
Yeah, that'll work out fine. Yeah.
All right.
They're gonna need them for the next session. Yeah, they're gonna need them for the next session. They're washing it right now. The only thing is the top, the top's missing. Can you make it, bring it close, just a bit closer? Oh, there you go. There you go.
This is the other closest I can get to.
Well, no, I was just thinking like you were in good shape over there. If we just
Well, yeah, because your slides are in. It's not landscape. Your slides are in 4x3 versus 16x9. So that should be fine. I mean, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah, that was all screen. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll do that. Cool. Let's do it. I was thinking get started.
All right, guys, 2 minutes, we'll get started.
It's kind of nice to be inside talking about your science all day. I don't feel like I need to run out and being really sick.
We're trying to, yeah. I think we go for next year's students too.
Good? Feeling good?
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Let's get started. Thank you, Eric, for being here. We're going to talk about trans-2-nominal. Yay.
Yay. All right. Hey, welcome. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to review some previous research that I provided at previous out-of-towner meetings. So I just wanted to say thank you. I'm looking forward to the talk, and then hopefully questions and dialogue around your own experiences with trans-2-nominal. The outline today, I'm going to talk about what is trans-2-nominal. Talk a little bit about the history of the research that went into trying to figure out what was causing this papery off note that brewers were starting to find in their beer back in the 50s all the way through the 90s. I'm going to dive a little bit into malt lipids because you have to understand a little bit more around, okay, where is this actually coming from, right? This trans-2-nominal. Where does it come from? And then the fate of trans-2-nominal in the brewing process, which is really interesting, and I think there's still more to be researched on what's truly happening with trans-2-nominal as it goes from whether it's the incoming grain, incoming malt, or all the way through the package process. So I'm going to touch a little bit about a method that we developed when I was at Miller Coors that allowed us to measure wort nonino potential. So we'll talk about that. And then, more importantly, I think the key thing to take out of here is how do you control trans 2 nonino in your process? What are the practical things that you can do? I think that's the most important thing that you want to take from this. I'm going to share with you some results of optimization trials that we executed where we played around with a couple of factors at the same time. And then, if I have time, I'll talk a little bit about masking effects of certain compounds that could mask the impact of papery. So what is trans 2 nonino? Well, it just so happens it is a monounsaturated 9-carbon aldehyde, and it has a flavor off note described as either papery or cardboard, okay? And this is just a typical time course development of trans 2 nonino that occurs in packaged beer. So over time, it eventually increases to a point where it might stabilize, okay? And so this is just an example of some profiles that we were doing at Coors. But there's various reported flavor thresholds. One paper in 2009 said it was, could be picked up as low as 30 parts per trillion, okay? There's been some other research that says anywhere from 50 to 110 parts per trillion. Now, if you had to ask me from a practical basis what I would estimate what that is, based on American light lagers, I would probably go about 80 parts per trillion, okay? So you can see this compound is very flavor active because, we're measuring in the part per trillion range. So we embarked on a journey because we had an issue with trans 2 nonino, one of our breweries. And so we were fortunate enough to have a very, very strong analytical method that could measure it in beer. And this is just a correlation plot between our sensory panels and the actual analytical measurement of trans 2 nonino. This is a really strong correlation when you're talking about actually sensory panel correlation to actually analytical chemistry. This is very strong. So the nice thing about this method is it gave us some real confidence in terms of being able to track it throughout the process to understand what was happening in our brewing process and how could we actually make changes. So we'll talk a little bit about the history. Siebel's actually came across this in 1954. They reported this paper off note that was formed, and it was really part of their experiments. They were adding in acetaldehyde into beer. And so all of a sudden, adding in acetaldehyde into beer, they started to pick up this papery off note. And that was like one of the first reported pieces of literature around trans 2 nonino. And then in 1970, Molson's actually were able to identify that this was trans 2 nonino, and that was what's causing the cardboard off note in beer. Okay, that was back in 1970. Heineken in 1971, they proposed other T2N precursors formed enzymatically. They're called trihydroxyoctadecanoic acids. This is the chemical structure of those. Okay, this is actually part of metabolic pathways inside of plants. Okay, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because this isn't a big thing in terms of brewing, but there is probably some truth to the fact that we do have trans 2 nonino coming in from our malted barley, okay, because of what's happening. Morton Mildgard in 72 noticed that if you acidified beer down to a pH of 2 and you heated it, you could make all kinds of trans 2 nonino. Lindsay's handing out some beer, so hang on, don't drink it right away. But keep it in the right order. If you don't keep it in the right order, you might be able to figure out what it is. Carl Siebert and Wang working at Stroh, they actually came across the same study where they acidified their beer and they ended up having over 400-fold increase in trans 2 nonino. But the thing is that they demonstrated that these precursors were too stable to break down at typical beer pHs. So they weren't necessarily interested in going further in that research. But what's interesting is that Kieran proposed another method of how trans 2 nonino can be formed, and they proposed the aldol condensation hypothesis where heptanal and acetaldehyde would actually lead to the formation of trans 2 nonino. The only problem with this is that heptanal is generally very low in beer, okay? And so with that said, this mechanism has always been kind of questionable. VLB, they actually detected the formation of trans-2-nonenal of oleic acid through photooxidation. Okay, so they proposed that as a potential method. Now, let's talk a little bit about lipoxygenase, because this is really where this is happening, and the formation of trans-2-nonenal. I don't want to get too in-depth in all the chemistry, because it is fairly in-depth, but the thing is that linoleic acid by itself could potentially be attacked by two different forms of lipoxygenase. One is called LOX1, one is called LOX2. They lead to different what are called hydroperoxide intermediates. One is called 9-LOOH, it's on the left. The other one is 13-LOOH, and that's on the right. The formation of the 9-LOOH leads to the formation of trans-2-nonenal. Okay? So I think the key takeaway is that there is an enzyme that is present in malted barley, and that enzyme will actually take linoleic acid and it'll make trans-2-nonenal. Okay. At BRI in 1982, they did propose, lipoxygenases were acting during malting and mashing. And, they did some nice work looking at what happens to lipoxygenase during kilning. And it just so happens that, that actually gets denatured quite a bit because it's very heat labile. Dick Pyler, who I had a chance to work with, and Paul Schwartz, in 1984, they proposed that these, the LOX enzymatic damage actually occurs in germination. So you're actually making T2N during germination. Okay? And possibly T2N precursors. At Labatt's, they were doing a study and they didn't believe that, the algal condensation hypothesis was true, and they felt that really what was happening is flavor neutral adducts, okay, with bisulfite were being were part of the equation. And what they did is they found out with acetaldehyde additions they were finding increases in trans-2-nonenal. So this one here I think has got some relevance in terms of brewing, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later on. So I just wanted to touch upon that. But in 1983, these researchers, similar work, they showed stabilizations of trans-2-nonenal release with SO2 additions. Okay, now it just so happens that, okay, I'm going to jump into something else before we jump into the sulfite addicts. But Heineken, in 1990, they actually measured something called nonenal potential in wort, and they developed a method. They acidified wort down to a pH of 4, and they really were going after the fact that there's probably bound forms that we can't detect, okay, in wort. Okay, so they went after trying to get these bound forms, and we're going to talk what those are here in a second. But they were able to establish a correlation between the lipoxygenase and the wort nonenal potential. So they're trying to draw that relationship between the enzyme coming in from the malt as well as what was being produced in wort. And here's just a study of looking at the impact of pH on wort nonenal potential in their study. So you can see as you drop the pH, you have a significant increase in the amount of nonenal that is produced. At Carlton and United Breweries in the 90s, they actually demonstrated that 90% of the, that 90% of the T2N disappears during wort processing. Okay. At Sapporo, they did some work with mashing studies and looking at lock reactions, and they actually proposed or actually summarized a nice little paper that showed that autooxidation is not the primary mechanism of linoleic acid going to T2N. So it was really around lipoxygenase is the key enzyme that's catalyzing the formation of these hydroperoxides, which eventually lead to the formation of trans-2-nonenal. They also did some studies. I think this was the first one where they looked at the mash acidification. So they acidified the mash down to a pH of 5.0 versus a 5.5, and they were able to demonstrate a significant reduction in trans-2-nonenal. Now, researchers at Leuven in 1995 proposed this concept that you really have trans-2-nonenal binding with amino acids. okay? And they're forming something called shift bases or amines, okay? And why are these of interest? There's the path, or the actual formation of the amine. This is just from their paper showing their spectra, where you have lysine, and then you have trans-2-nonenal, and then you have the adduct being formed there. Okay, so they're able to demonstrate that there was something going on. Now, the one thing that we have to realize is yeast, okay, actually do us a lot of favors, okay? They can reduce free trans-2-nonenal. They have what are known as NADPH-dependent aldoketo reductases. How many people here have tasted wort? About everybody, right? Wort's very complex, but there is a complex bouquet of aldehydes in wort, okay? If you track that and you taste after day 2 of fermentation, do those aldehydes, what happened to them? They go away. They go away. And the yeast are actually cleaning those aldehydes up. So they're doing us some favor. NA beers, NA beers are notorious for aldehydes, right? And that's because of the arrested fermentation. But if you think about it, yeast can actually reduce free trans-2-nonenal. But if it's actually down to something, it can't do anything to it. And that's probably one of the most important things to remember from the talk here. Further researchers, let's see, they looked at the bound forms, and they found out that, you get a higher formation of these bound forms at a higher pH. Okay? So the higher your pH is in your process, mashing, watering, you name it, you're going to have or create the formation of these amines. And so I just want to make sure that we're aware of that, because it's very important when we're talking about pH control. Carlsberg actually did the research on the existence of bisulfite addicts. Okay? And there's actually, these are the 4 different bisulfite addicts, and there's one that's actually reversible. And that's this first, how come it didn't, and that's this one here, the first one, the 1,2 addition. Okay? So this one's actually reversible. So what that means is that if SO2 gets ripped off, then guess what you have? Free trans-2-nonenal. Okay? And we'll talk about that in a second, because I said something about previous researchers adding acetaldehyde, right? Okay, into their beer and noticing all of a sudden it's paper city. Talk a little bit about that here in a second. Fatty acids, so I want to talk a little bit about free fatty acids, just malt lipids in general. This is just a profile of what we would typically see coming in from malted barley. You have a lot of C16-0, which is palmitic acid. You have a little bit of palmitoleic acid, which obviously is a yeast fatty acid, that unsaturated fatty acid. The predominant one is actually C18-2, and that's linoleic acid. Okay, and this is where T2N comes from. Okay, there are also fatty acids that are esterified. So you can have mono, di, and triglycerides, and that provides a source of fatty acids, as well as phospholipids. Okay, and so there's plenty of phospholipids in malt, and it just goes to show you that there's all kinds of these lipids that could be subject to some form of attack by either lipoxygenase or autooxidation. Now, linoleic acid is interesting because it is weakest at this 11 carbon point here. Okay, because of let's see, it's the weakest point. So if there is a free radical that is formed in the process, it'll actually abstract one of those hydrogen atoms, and that makes this molecule very unstable. And then so what it does is it either splits into the 9-LOOH or the 13-LOH free radical. Okay? Then they further go through changes. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because there's all kinds of papers on it. But at the end of the day, this is kind of what's happening is we got the formation of these hydroperoxides from linoleic acid, and it just continues to break down, okay, into leading to trans-2-nonenal. Now, there are other pathways with the 13-LOOH that form other aldehydes, but they're not as flavor impactful, okay, in beer. So this 9-LOH can be further broken down. Both have been reported mechanisms, and so you end up with the formation of trans-2-nonenal. There has been some reports of autooxidation of esterified fatty acids, such as in phospholipids, It's been documented. So if those are oxidized to some degree, then if there are any lipases or phospholipases occurring during mashing, which they do, then you'll end up with the formation of trans-2-nonenal. It'll basically release that damaged fatty acid. The enzymatic oxidation won't go through this entire pathway, but you'll see it in the literature. You'll see a lot of these, the schematics here, but you can see that this is just the fate of what's going to happen with linoleic acid eventually going down to trans-2-nonenal. So it's very, very complex, but the most important thing is to realize that, it's coming from linoleic acid, and more than likely it's probably coming from lipoxygenase. Okay? So brewhouse profiling, this is just a study done by some researchers where they started to measure at kettle full, at the end of boil, and then at cold work. You can see that it gradually increased, and then at fermenter full. Now, I don't know if these researchers pulled a sample at fermenter full with yeast present, but that might show you what the yeast are doing immediately, okay, in reducing that trans-2-nonenal to nonenal. I think what's important is that, we talked about the yeast, right, and how they can reduce these aldehydes that are formed. And they reduce all kinds of different aldehydes. So what happens is that if we do form an amine complex in the brewhouse, so we actually have trans-2-nonenal, okay, pairing up with some form of an amino acid, then guess what? Yeast cannot reduce it, okay? So, yeast can reduce the free form, but if it's bound, forget it, okay? It's going to survive all the way through. Same thing with sulfite addicts. Sulfur dioxide is formed during fermentation, especially with lager yeast, okay? And, the sooner that sulfur dioxide is formed during fermentation, the more likely that you could form these sulfite addicts, okay? And that will end up rendering it inaccessible by yeast. So we have to be careful with sulfur dioxide production as well, okay? And it'll lead to the formation of both reversible and irreversible forms or bound trans-2-nonenal. After fermentation, though, we know that beer is generally processed cold, right? And it's only during, say, pasteurization where beer is heated back up, again, for a short time, and then brought back down in terms of temperature, okay? Whether that is through a flash pasteurizer or through a tunnel pasteurizer, okay? So what happens is that because beer is fairly acidic compared to wort, its pH range, and just in general, is roughly in the 4 to 4.4 range, okay? For typical beer pH, depending on the styles. Well, these amines are actually facilitated, or the release of the bound forms are facilitated by both temperature and pH. So higher temperature and lower pH, okay, facilitate a faster release of these bound forms of trans-2-nonenal. Keep that in mind. Now, we talked about acetaldehyde. Previous, researchers actually did some studies where they put in acetaldehyde and all of a sudden the beer was Paper City. What's happening here is if we do have the SO2-T2N adduct, okay, that is formed, okay, during fermentation, what happens with acetaldehyde is it will actually rip off the SO2 and cause a free T2N, okay? And if you think about the oxidation of ethanol, okay, ethanol oxidizes what is one of its final byproducts? Acetaldehyde, right? So acetaldehyde is, you got plenty of ethanol, it's going to oxidize over time, okay? And then you just have, the opportunity to rip off more of those bound adducts. So the rate of T2N development in packaged beer is really dependent on both the free and bound form in the packaged beer. This is a correlation study that we did looking at looking at the rate of T2N release over the course of warm storage, okay, based on the amount of total trans-2-nonenal in the beer. And you can see there's a rough correlation there. So more total trans-2-nonenal, what does it mean? It means a higher rate of release, okay? One thing we didn't study, and I wish that we would have, is actually looking at, what is the impact of pH? What's the difference between a pH of 4.1 versus a pH of 4.4? Okay, but I got a little piece of data to share with you based on this, a story. So this method that we developed is actually something that Vesely had proposed. And it's somewhat elaborate. We got a SPME fiber coated with PFBHA, okay? And I have no idea what PFBHA stands for at this point. But it was a fairly sophisticated method based on GC, MS, and electron ionization mass spectroscopy. And Roman Ortiz actually presented a paper on that. It's quite an elaborate method for measuring wort aldehydes, okay? Well, we're just so lucky that, we followed the same method as Drost, or very similar, from Heineken. And, we know that many authors have, published or established a correlation between wort non-inhaled potential and what happens in packaged beer. What we were really lucky with, though, is the fact that we all now had a tool to measure it in wort. We knew that most of the formation of trans 2 non-inhaled, whether it was bound or precursors, whatever you want to call it, we could measure trials in wort. So we could actually alter things in the brewing process, okay? And we could get an immediate read and not wait for beer to package and then do sensory evaluation. So that was the nice thing about having this tool. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some control strategies, okay? While we're doing that, Lindsay has provided you with 2 samples. Lindsay, which one is which? Or are we going to tell them?
The first one that I handed out should be on your left as control. The second one that I handed out should be test. You also should be able to.
So what you're going to evaluate is real trans 2 non-inhaled. That's been added into the beer from some flavor capsules.
What's the base beer mountain time?
What's that? Yeah, base beer's mountain time. So it's a relatively light lager. So I'm going to share with you some experiences on practical trials, because we had this great method and we did a bunch of trials just trying to alter trans 2 non-inhaled and try to make things better. The paper off-note, everybody getting that in the beer? Yeah, it's about 3 times flavor threshold, so pretty nasty, isn't it?
What was the flavor threshold?
If you ask me, I would say 80 parts per trillion, okay? Researchers have published anywhere from 30 to 110 parts per trillion, so based on my practical experience, I think it was fair to say about 80 parts per trillion.
So the sample, though, is that about 240 on that particular sample, or is it around 80?
It's 3 times flavor threshold, whatever the flavor threshold was. So 3 times whatever they viewed that as. Lindsay, do you have any idea?
It's 6 times the flavor threshold, but I actually don't know what the law says does on that. And I kind of made it more like 7.
Oh, okay.
Like it was
Yum. Cool. Thanks for doing that. So one thing that you can do is malt modification does play a role. And I just want to show you some data mining that we did with malt data. We were looking at the LOX quantity or LOX values versus pH and FAN as from the Congress match that gets reported out on your C of A. You can see that the average LOX activity generally increases if the Congress match pH is high. Okay, and so as you're monitoring your your C of A's from your maltster, you want to make sure that they're keeping it generally to the lower end of where you typically run for pH. Also, you can see the relationship with FAN coming off that Congress match. A higher FAN generally coincides with a lower average LOX. So be aware of that. If you start to see your modification start to go south, you may want to question whether or not you're running the risk of having higher lipoxygenase activity during the mashing process. Okay. And I think it has to be said, and this is the work that Dick Pyler had done with Paul Schwartz at NDSU, but I do think that hot malts could already have T2N precursors. Okay, so the T2N is already there inside the malt. Okay, so just a heads up. And I'm kind of a statistician by trade. And I do not claim this to be statistically valid in terms of a trial, but one of my coworkers kind of pointed this out when we were chasing stuff that, hey, we had average fan of 214 when we ran these trials, and then on these trials we had an average fan of about 229 coming in from the malt, and look at the differences between the trials. They want to just point that out, and I thought, yeah, there might be something there, okay? Just in terms of, higher malt fan, generally maybe lower lipoxygenase, and then the lower levels of total trans-2-nonenal. Okay, lipoxygenase. How do you control it through a practical parameter? Is through malt aging. Okay, this is 3 different 2-row varieties that were profiled. I think we did the work with NDSU, and you can see that over time the lipoxygenase level drops. Okay, what do maltsters want to do as soon as they kill that batch of malt? They want to ship it right to you, right? They want to ship it right off to you. So what I would say is that, ideally if you can get it out, not mashed in until 28 days, that's probably a good rule of thumb. But they're going to start shipping it on day 14. And so hopefully you've got some transit time and some storage time before you actually mash in. Hallie Oser was an intern at Coors, and she actually published some of this work. I forget exactly where, but she was profiling the LOX activity during the malting process, and you can see that kilning really knocks it down, right? But you can see a lot is developed during germination, and there's a good reason why. It has something to do with plant physiology. We're going to look at that here really quickly, but the idea here is that if you think about kilning, and you get a batch of malt in that comes in low on color, I would be questioning, okay, what is my LOX running, okay, in that batch of malt? Okay, so just keep that in mind. Oh, LOX-free malts. Who here has heard about LOX-free malts? Yeah, there's a couple of varieties out there. Polar Star is one, okay. Brewers have played with, they're actually brewing commercially with LOX-free malts. And, they are successful. I've heard some horror stories of LOX-free malts. I heard that the barley out in the field likes to lodge early. Okay, so that just pisses off the farmers. Okay, and they don't want to grow it. This is just an overview of some polyunsaturated fatty acid metabolism that occurs inside of plants. Okay, now, lipoxygenase is not out there to make T2N. Okay, in plants. It's there to make these hydroperoxides, which I talked about earlier. And then that funnels into all kinds of different pathways. Some of these deal with wound and disease resistance, which are critical for the survival of the plant. Okay? So when you start monkeying around with Mother Nature, you're really going to mess around with something in the plant biochemistry. So, but there are brewers that use, like Polar Star and do well with it. So, it's been proven. Okay, this is just a picture of malt germinating day 2 in a germination bed. You can see there's all kinds of rootlets developing. Okay, and you'll also see if you look at it after 4 days of germination, you can see acrospire. Okay, that starts to poke through. Just so happens that in the rootlets and acrospire, lots of LOX1, LOX2. Okay, lots of it. So, I would say, if you get a malt pile, just make sure that your rootlets are removed from your malts. This is something that Coors used to remove the rootlets. But if I were to grab a malt sample and I saw this, I would be a little concerned. Okay? So, do take a look at your malt every once in a while if you see these rootlets. You may want to talk to them about cleaning up, that process. This year at WBC, there was a poster talking about polishing up malts. And I had the opportunity to just take a couple of pictures of it, but I found it interesting in that they were putting it through some type of polisher that would remove an outside area where lipoxygenase was localized to, as well as the inside. So it's out there. I don't have much more information other than somebody actually, wrote a poster this year at WBC. So you need more information, you'll probably have to go find out who that person was. But I thought that was kind of an interesting approach. I wouldn't necessarily advocate it from an efficiency perspective because there's probably a lot of loss. Acrospires, what do they like to do during mashing? They like to float up on top, okay? And I like to use, I'll call these things grist pizzas. See, ever seen them floating on top? Okay? And they like to float on top. Well, guess what's loaded in there? If I took a sample one day, pulled it out, okay? And you could actually see little yellow globules of oil or lipids, okay? So in here, if you've got acrospires, okay, you've got lipids floating on top, you got acrospires. What do acrospires have? Lipoxygenase. Okay, you're probably a little bit colder at temperature, okay, because this is on top of the mash. You got the recipe, perfect recipe for what? LOX reactions, and that's going to form T2N. So avoid this at all costs, okay, if you can, through proper mixing, etc. But these acrospires, they do tend to float up on top. Okay, and maybe thicker mashes would work. You know, maybe making it thicker might help. So just an idea to look at. Okay, the time between milling and mashing. Don't get into the habit of milling on a Friday, leaving everything in the grist case until Monday morning. It certainly gives you a head start, I agree, but at the same time that might be a bad practice, just because you have the opportunity, obviously, to form more transtitanoidal precursors. Now, I will tell you a story. So we were evaluating hammer mill malt at Coors because we got mirror filter presses. So we shipped out some malt to somewhere in Kansas to go get hammer milled. They hammer milled it for us, put it in super sacks. They were returning it back on a train on a rail car, went missing for like 3 weeks. So we decided, what the hell, we'll go ahead and brew with it anyway. So we brewed with it, and we isolated all the way through packaging. We didn't see anything deleterious in terms of flavor. Okay, but I still advocate don't mill on Friday and mash it on Monday. I don't have the video here, so I apologize. I lost it when I transitioned careers, but I'm going to tell you that dust will increase the mash pH. Okay, for some reason, malt dust will have an adverse effect and drive mash pH up. We actually did some trials with Congress Mash, and we added in some malt dust, and it actually drove the pH up significantly. So be aware that if you do have troubles with your, with any bag houses or, anything dealing with malt dust, just make sure it's not going back into the mash tun.
That's pre-crushed malt dust? Or is it you're including like malt, like the flour in there after crush too?
No. I think that was during in the milling. Yeah. So
that dust from
yeah.
the milling is where you.
Yeah. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull up a video here. So I actually this was actually called A Tale of Two Breweries. And then I lost the videos. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. This is an example of mashing in from up above and down below. Now, what's happening as that hydrated grist is falling? What's it doing? It's splashing around, okay? Is the atmosphere inside that flooded with CO2 or nitrogen? No. No, it's oxygen, right? So you've got oxygen, you've got hydrated grist coming through, okay, it's picking up the oxygen, and guess what's happening? LOX reactions are occurring right then and there, okay? So I'm not a big fan of graining in from the top. I'm going to show you an example of another one we grain in from the bottom. But this is just an area where you could be doing some significant damage, okay, to your mash. So go back to the PowerPoint here. So that's the bad mash, and I just want to touch on something because J.P. Baiwa and Charlie Bamforth did a real nice study on lipoxygenase, and they really found out that oxygen is the rate limiting substrate for that reaction to occur. So a smaller Km just means that the velocity of the reactions are achieved, maximum velocities based on O2. So the more oxygen that you have mash exposed to, the more likely you're going to end up having lipoxygenase reactions, okay? And I can't reiterate, when you mash it in from up on top,
any splashing that occurs, the malt is just going back up in the air, picking up more oxygen, and you're just doing more damage. And I think most of the damage is occurring in the first few minutes of mashing in. Okay? So I'm going to go back over to a good mash in, and I'll show you what this one looks like. So I was at Bell's working there a couple weeks ago, and I actually was going to use, let me just see if I can maximize this. Sorry about that. How do you get that to maximize? You can see it mashing in, right? Let's see if I can try to figure out how to maximize this. To the right? Yeah. Well, I'm going to go ahead and just play this without being able to completely. Yeah, I don't know why it won't. So what you're seeing here is the mash is coming in from the bottom, and it's gently coming up. You don't see any splashing. Okay? And this is really a textbook case of what I would consider something that is going to minimize the impact of lipoxygenase in the first few minutes of mashing in. Okay? What was interesting is that I actually went into the Bell's Brewery to go do some work, and when I first got there a couple of months before, I was looking at the mashing in, and they were actually splashing. Okay? So I asked them, slow down your entrance, slow down your mash transfer initially, build up enough level inside the mash tun, then you can ramp up. Right? And guess what? They did that. First time I think anybody's listened to me in the brewing industry. So, but anyways, it's a great, this is just a great example of, what is a good mash or mashing in. Danny?
With that, obviously, with equipment limitations, you can't always mash in that way or going guns, so they kind of still. That being said, what about premium grains? Does that mean it's pre-oxidized?
You had to ask me, right? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think you have to do your testing, right?
Right.
And find out.
Is it the combination of water and the movement that's causing oxidation, or what's actually causing it? Is the question.
Yeah, is it auto-oxidation, or is it not even happening, or
It's been treated as mechanical, but what's the vector into, when you say the splashing and all that stuff, is that what's causing it, or?
Yeah, I do believe that the splashing, just getting up into the air and picking up oxygen with lipoxygenase is the biggest driver in mashing.
The water maybe speeds up the oxidation a lot faster, right? Like dry is probably not reacting nearly as fast as the wet.
Yeah. This was really, with my previous videos that I have, it was really a tale between two different breweries. One that was problematic, this was the trans-2-nonenal levels, okay, measured in their beer, versus this one, which was mashing in from the bottom, okay? But there's a lot more process differences, so it's not just that one thing that I want you to realize, that there's a lot of things that we could do with our brewing process to effectively drive down trans-2-nonenal. This was just a study that we did with Congress Mash because we had our own malting operations, and we did a little experiment playing around with temperature, time, and also mash acidification. And what I found interesting is that mash acidification trial actually showed a significant improvement, okay, in the amount of T2N being formed. But in the Congress mash, because it was the same malt, for some reason we didn't pick up as much trans-2-nonenal, and we suspect that it has something to do with just the fact that the limited amount of oxygen pickup in that Congress mash. So then we went after and we started looking at what could we play with in our brewing process. So we knew that mash pH was something that could potentially affect the trans-2-nonenal formation. We acidified with phosphoric acid to the foundation water, and lo and behold, we found out that for bound trans-2-nonenal, we had a pretty significant reduction in trans-2-nonenal. We reduced the pH by about 0.27 units, okay, with the acidification, and you can see the significant effect of where the bound trans-2-nonenal got reduced significantly, okay? And this is the one that you want to go after, right? Because yeast cannot touch this. Yeast can touch that, but not this. Okay? So this is just a scatter plot showing, our mash pH roughly about 5.3 versus 5.7. Now you got to realize big mash tuns can't get at the initial mash going in, right, to get a sample. What do you think it really is? Do you think it's sitting at a mash pH of about 5.7 with some foundation water sitting at maybe an 8 pH? It's probably much higher, right? And that's where I think all the damage is occurring initially, is that the first few minutes of mashing it. Okay? So if you've got foundation water, which is not a bad idea to have some foundation water in your mash tun, make sure you acidify it. And it'll have a profound impact, okay, on the formation of trans 2-nonenal. Yeah, so just, when you start to see your mash pHs getting over 5.6, that's dangerous, right? You're setting yourself up for trans 2-nonenal. Oop. Got to tell a little story here. Got lots of stories. So in one of our breweries, we had sulfuric acid to treat the water, okay? And the sulfuric acid dosing pump went down. And maintenance didn't want to fix it on a Friday. And we were going to be brewing over the weekend. So the quality engineers called up. They're all upset, and these guys aren't going to do anything. And, and they're all, really pissed off at the maintenance crew. But I told them, I says, let's just follow this beer all the way through the process. And I asked them, when it gets packaged, grab a case, stick it in your desk at, ambient temperatures, and let's taste it after a week. So followed it through the process. Lo and behold, they get on a conference call with me. They open up the beer, and Ryan was actually there. Ryan worked with me, and he can attest to what did it taste like?
Wet cardboard.
Wet cardboard, yeah. And I just knew it was going to happen, just based on previous work. So, if your maintenance guys, say they're not going to fix the pump until the following week, tell them they got to do it right away. Okay, and just a couple of studies with doing some different trials. You really do have to acidify the foundation water to have maximal benefit. Okay. Mashing and temperature. LOX is a heat label enzyme. We did some trials looking at the formation of trans 2-nonenal, and it just so happens if you mash it a little bit warmer, then you can have a profound impact, especially on the free T2N that's being produced. So it's just something to think about as you're being able to optimize some mashing recipes. That if you want to go a little bit warmer, it might help. We were interested in wort clarity because we just thought that at the end of Warloff, if we have too clear worts, okay, we were actually more worried about impacts of not having enough lipids for fermentation. But we were just curious, what would happen if we did if we started collecting worts at 20 EBC, okay, on Vorloff versus 100 EBC, and no real impact, no statistical significance, okay? So nothing to be claimed there or any benefit. Same thing with raking. We thought maybe what happens if you do a lot of raking? You end up stirring up the mash bed, and then does that transfer, some T2N precursors going into wort? And nothing really happened there. So sparge water pH. That was something that we were interested in testing, but it wasn't easy for us on our production scale. So we ended up, I have to reiterate that this study here, which is the impact of pH on amine formation, as you go higher and higher, you're going to have any free trans 2-nonenal. It'll complex with an amino acid, and then boom, you've got something that you cannot have the yeast take care of it for you. So it'll just get released later in package. Sparge water temperature is something that we played with as well, just on the onset of trying to figure out maybe sparge temperature has something to do with it. Really no statistically significant impact. Okay, so we just concluded, okay, we'll just move on, not worry about that factor. This study was produced in 2001, and it was around the timing of hops additions and different types of hop products. They just found out that if they didn't add any hops versus looking at Saaz pellets, Challenger pellets, and CO2 extracts, you could see maybe a difference in the overall nonenal potential in the wort. Okay, so there can be an impact based on the types of hop and timing of hops. Okay, and I'm going to share with you a study that we did at Coors. So this is a study where we purposely, the red profile, we held the hops out from being added initially during the kettle fill. You can see the black one is the control, the normal brews, and you can see the impact of the trans 2-nonenal, both free and bound, over the course of the boil. You can see that it had a profound impact. Okay? And I think, you know, adding the hops in late had a general tendency to have a little bit more, you know, protein floating up in the wort, okay? Which would make it all most of the way through. So I just think, you know, that is something that is at your, you know, at your control, is the timing of the hop addition. Wort boiling time. This is something that interests us from a standpoint of looking at trying to further improve it. And just so happens that increased wort boiling time had a profound impact on the bound trans-2-nonenal. Okay? So that is something that if you're looking at shortening your boil time, be very careful, because you could be negatively impacting your flavor stability. Even though people have suggested that longer boil times hurts flavor stability. We did a study where we actually grabbed MHOF cones and then looked at, just in the very top, the supernatant, and looked at what happened to the bound nonenal potential. And sure enough, on 2 different brews, you could see the impact over time, okay, on wort boiling. So there is something there, and I would just caution you, reducing boil time might be something you want to carefully consider. Yeah, and this is just the results of some studies. I think it was interesting, the impact of pH and the protein precipitation that was occurring during the boil. Okay, so this was all part of our investigations. But as you precipitate out more troop, okay, or more proteins out into your troop, okay, what does T2N like to hang out with? Amino acids, proteins, okay. So now Jaron Barrett and co-workers at Leuven actually presented that it's more likely that these staling aldehydes bind with cysteine. And if you think about wort boiling, there is a protein in barley called lipid transfer protein 1. That just happens to have a ton of disulfide bonds. And during wort boiling, as that unravels, this becomes a great opportunity to grab T2N. Okay? And if you can precipitate this fraction out, then you end up, you know, getting rid of some T2N. So, interesting study that they had proposed. And this is just, you know, barley lipid transfer protein. So it shows you the different disulfide bonds in yellow. And as they break open, then you've got the SH groups that can complex with trans-2-nonenal and hopefully precipitate it. Interesting whirlpool stand time is something that I still can't explain this and what was happening, but the bound fraction, if we went with a shorter whirlpool stand time, we ended up having lower bound trans-2-nonenal. Now, the nice thing is that playing around with your whirlpool rest, you're going to actually have an impact on the amount of trub that actually gets carried forward, okay, into your fermenter. That can add benefit from a yeast nutrient perspective, right, in terms of lipids, which yeast love linoleic acid, by the way. I absolutely love it. So they'll take it up and they will incorporate it into their membrane. So, you know, there is something to say that, you know, there is something with that whirlpool stand time. But I think that, you know, we're looking at more from the standpoint of if we can reduce or lengthen the time before SO2 is actually excreted by yeast, then chances are we're going to do a better job of avoiding those sulfite addicts, okay, being formed. So that was part of our rationale. So, final beer pH. I presented some of this work in 2014, Saratoga. And this gentleman right over here, Peter Broekhart, was the brewmaster at New Belgium. And he stood up in the audience and he said, "Why is this only a lager problem? It's never in our ales." And I couldn't answer it, okay? I couldn't answer it at the time because we were still embarking on understanding what was going on in our process. Well, now that I've been at New Belgium for about a year and a half, I kind of understand some of the brewing practices that they had that, you know, helped with this issue. So don't necessarily know if it's, you know, a lager versus an ale yeast problem as opposed to maybe some brewing process issues. But I just wanted to share with you, after Peter said that, I think I reached out to one of my brewing colleagues up in New Belgium and says, "Hey, give us some fresh fat tire. Let's go take a look at the profile." And what happened was we profiled it for a couple of days or for a couple of weeks, and you can see this was our typical lager rate formation, okay, on brands that we were going after that were problematic. And you can see the New Belgium brand actually had a low rate of development, okay? So now, the one thing that was true in the study is the pH of that beer was 4.55 versus our lagers much lower, 4.1, 4.2. So that could be part of what's explaining why there was a lower release of these bound forms of T2N in the New Belgium lager. Okay. Now, I will tell you that after I've been there, there's also some good brewing practices. So we actually do a wet mill in a CO2 environment. Okay. So there is no chance of oxygen getting in during the mashing in process initially. Just later, and then we do, entry from the bottom. Okay, so very controlled mashing process. Okay, with that said, we found 4 factors in our brewing process that we knew would drive T2N. So we decided to do a test brew with all factors optimized. And we went along and collected data, and the free trans-2-nonenal was reduced significantly, as well as the bound trans-2-nonenal was reduced significantly. Okay? And then we isolated all the way to package. Then we measured the rate of trans-2-nonenal formation in the beer, okay, that with this optimized profile. We actually achieved a 74% reduction in the formation of trans-2-nonenal with those 4 factors, okay? So one thing that has to be said here, in brewing, if you're going to change something, there's always something that you're going to screw up if you go too far, right? So with mash pH, yeah, maybe if we went down to a 4 or 5 mash pH, hey, we won't form any T2N. Guess what? We're going to have all kinds of other issues, okay? So it's really trying to figure out, what are those little process control knobs that you can play with to nudge the process in a better direction. But this actually had a profound impact on the amount of T2N that was formed. And we also did sensory on this. And I just want to highlight something that over time, the test versus the control brew, we were significant. But when we compared the 8-week mean sensory score to the optimized trial, this one scored in the lower 1 percentile of that baseline that we would typically see after 8 weeks. So a pretty significant impact, okay, in terms of shifting that flavor profile after 8 weeks. Okay, and just quickly, just for fun, isoamyl acetate and dimethyl sulfide, 2 common little flavor, flavor compounds that most brewers are trying to pay attention to for various reasons. We thought, what happens if you have more DMS in the beer? What happens if you have more isoamyl acetate? And we did an experimental design, and we actually ran it on our taste panel with these spikes of both IAA and DMS. And just so happens that we probably come across something that is a significant synergistic interaction, which basically says that when I have both isoamyl acetate and dimethyl sulfide high, what does that do to the perceived sensory perception of trans-2-nonenal? Drives it down. Okay, so it's a synergistic interaction. So we found that kind of interesting. So final comments. So trans-2-nonenal actually occurs in malting, and it occurs in brewhouse operations. Okay, if I have to summarize what is the most critical step, it's probably those first few minutes or seconds of mashing in. And I firmly believe that that's where most of the damage is occurring. And why is that? Because we have the tendency to have more exposure to oxygen. Okay, we're mashing in, and the pH of that initial mash would likely be pretty high. Okay. Trans-2-nonenal is released over time, right? We've got these bound forms that survive all the way through the process. They're in the finished beer. Beer pH is 4 to 4.4 roughly. And if it's stored ambient or at room temperature, okay, all you're doing is facilitating the release of those amines, and you're releasing trans-2-nonenal, okay, along with other things, sulfite addicts. So, mashing oxygen and pH control are critical, okay, for controlling this. So if you go out, sometime next week, you measure your mash pH once the mash tun gets full and you see it's 5.6, you may want to consider adding some phosphoric acid to help out. The bound forms, these are the most important ones that we want to pay attention to, and why? Why do we want to pay attention to the bound forms? They survive, right? They survive all the way through, and the yeast can't reduce it, so it leaves you kind of subject to what makes it forward. Wort boiling time is a key factor. I mean, there's something going on there, and I have a feeling it has something to do with precipitating out with proteins. Okay. And then hops, play a protective role. And sulfurs and esters could mask papery off notes. So with that said, I hope I'm not too late, But I just want to say thanks to Rob for allowing me to come here, Lindsay for pouring all that beer. Hopefully you guys got the T2N, and a couple of co-workers from the past that helped contribute to this research.
Eric, riddle me this, okay? Okay, I had, and you notice this, I had a distinct pleasure being on the oxidation panel at Miller, okay? I'm talking like 90s or so forth.
Yeah.
And along comes the TPO machines, all right? All right? And all of a sudden, when we run some bottles off the filler, we're seeing TPOs in the 800s.
Yeah.
God forbid, okay? All right?
Yeah.
So Carl and some of the other wizards out in packaging, drive it down to about 120 or so. Where I used to be able to pick up oxidation, I assume it was transcontinental, at about 6 weeks. All of a sudden I got pushed up to about maybe 9 or 10 weeks.
Sure. Yeah.
Why?
There's more than just transternal, right? In terms of what's happening, there's all kinds of different compounds that obviously are facilitated with higher oxygen, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of different carbonyls like furfural, 5-hydroxy-3-methyl furfural. Other compounds that increase over time with aging, right? Oxygen is an enemy of beer. We know that, right?
Yeah.
The only thing that we need oxygen for, and we need it, is for our yeast. If we miss that, we really screw things up. So I'll go with that one first.
Is word aeration implicated with transcontinental?
Great question. I never really dove into that because you have to aerate your work, right? You have to have oxygen in there. Yeah. Could it be playing a role? That's a great question. Yeah.
Just, aeration, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Just yeah. I mean, that'd be a great graduate student project. I'm going to go in the back here first.
You guys look at differences in yeast generation at all in terms of like if it's super important to avoid any sort of CO2 or SO2 generation up front, could that have some sort of impact when you're getting those like either earlier or late generations, maybe creating SO2 earlier and making those bound up?
Yeah, never had the opportunity to look at that. I've certainly tracked a lot of generations, and I've seen all kinds of crazy stuff where you have a really high SO2, a crop, and you take that crop and then you pitch it into the next production series of brews coming through, and then all of a sudden it's low. So it's like, yeah, could it play a role? Yeah, I mean, obviously you want to discard those generations that are showing that problematic trend. Just from a TTB compliance or an FDA compliance perspective, yeah.
Do you guys mess at all with any DO measurements in your mash?
No.
Okay.
No DO measurements in the mash. Mash water itself is, depending on what you're mashing in at, it's probably sitting anywhere, if you're mashing in around 50, it's probably close to 50, right? If you're mashing in even hotter, then you're probably sitting at a much higher temperature. So what does that do to the solubility? Drives it right down, right? I think it's more that splashing, where it's just good getting back up into the air and just being exposed to more oxygen that way. There was another one before you, Dana.
You mean 50C, right?
Pardon me?
You were saying 50C, you're mashing with 50C.
Yes, yeah. That's a typical protein rest.
Any issues with adding linoleic post mash in terms of like using an anaphone that say vegetable oil based? Would there be any like precursors or anything bound in those that if the yeast didn't take it up?
That's a great question. I haven't played around with anaphones much, so I don't know. We never incorporated in this study where we could have easily measured the wort nonanol potential with our wort method, which would have been nice, right? Just to see that. Yeah, no experience on that. I would say that that's worth testing because if shift bases are real and they're being formed, if you're adding this antifoam in somewhere and the pH is at the right level, chances are you're going to be complexing some with amino acids and dipeptides, tripeptides.
Just anecdotally, Dana, we pack all the time, and very often smell paper, and I don't think we ever get paper notes in our beer. I think
I think as long as you don't overdo it, the yeast take
yeah, you just got. I'm sure you got to be careful on that. So, yeah. Any other questions? Well, if you have any other questions later on, you'll see me around. So feel free to ask.
I think these guys are making our pizzas now. They brought out some popcorn to start for us. We can start munching on it.
What's the show here?
It's going on. I was like, I told him 12 minutes on the first shuttle, but he's sort of like,